Soft music plays from her phone speaker as the sun peeks through sheer curtains. There's warmth in the air. Hope, anticipation, love. Ifeyinwa stands in front of a mirror, her braids falling past her shoulders, eyes gleaming as she holds up her passport like it's a trophy. Ifeyinwa had never been this excited in her entire life. Not when she graduated, not even when Toby said, "I love you" for the first time. This trip to South Korea meant more than just a vacation. It was a reward, a promise fulfilled, the light at the end of a long, exhausting tunnel. "We made it," she whispered to herself, turning toward the open suitcase on the bed. Her carefully folded clothes were stacked neatly, each item chosen with care. Colors she thought would pop in pictures, shoes she'd never worn, a notebook for journaling every moment. She glanced at the time. Toby was supposed to be home an hour ago. Probably traffic, she mumbled, or one of those last-minute client calls. It was always something, but she didn't mind. Not really. She knew he worked hard. She'd seen him struggle. She'd watched him send out resume after resume, crashing on her couch, eating instant noodles while she worked double shifts to cover rent. And when he got the call back from that top firm, she'd cried. He didn't have the money to relocate, but she did. She gave it all to him. Every cent she had in savings. "Go, this is your dream," she had told him, cupping his face. "We'll be okay. We always are." Toby had kissed her then, deep and grateful. Told her she was his world. Promised her they'd see the world together. And now here they were, boarding passes printed, hotel booked, 7 days in Seoul. He walked through the door a moment later, and she lit up. "You're late," she said, teasing, as she ran to him and wrapped her arms around his neck. "I was about to leave without you." Toby chuckled and kissed her forehead, but it was distracted. "Quick? Sorry. Got caught up with something. Everything okay?" "Yeah, just tired." He pulled away a little too soon, heading straight for the shower. She watched him for a moment, brow furrowing ever so slightly. He'd been off lately, texting less, avoiding long conversations, barely holding her at night. But she chalked it up to stress. He worked with some of the biggest executives now. The pressure must be insane. "Maybe once we land," she said to herself, "he'll relax. We'll finally have time." She didn't see the way he looked at her when she wasn't watching, the way his jaw tensed, the way his hands clenched when he thought about what he was about to do. Later that night, as they sat on the plane, and Ifeyinwa looked out the window with sparkling eyes, she leaned over and squeezed his hand. "Can you believe it? We're really going. I've been dreaming about this since I was 13. "Yeah," Toby said softly, eyes fixed straight ahead. "It's wild." Ifeyinwa didn't notice the way he didn't smile back. She didn't see the text flash across his phone screen. "It's done. She's coming. You know what to do." The morning light in Seoul is soft and golden. The hum of distant traffic filters in through the hotel window. The room still smells faintly of jasmine from her lotion, and the sheets are warm where 2 bodies slept hours before. Except now, only one remains. Ifeyinwa stirred awake with a sleepy smile tugging at her lips. The first thing she felt was warmth. Sunlight pouring through the curtains, the softness of the hotel bed, the faint memory of Toby's hand brushing her cheek before she drifted off. She reached over to the other side of the bed. Cold. She opened her eyes. "Toby?" she called out, still groggy. "Did you go downstairs already?" No answer. She sat up, rubbing her eyes, brushing a braid behind her ear. The room was still. Still and wrong. His shoes were gone. His watch. His passport. His wallet. His suitcase. Gone. Everything that belonged to Toby was no longer there. Her breath caught in her throat. She threw off the sheets, checking the bathroom. Empty. Checked the closet. Nothing. She ran back to the bed and grabbed her phone. No new messages. No missed calls. She dialed his number. 1 ring. 2. 3. Blocked. No. This has to be a mistake, she whispered, heart pounding. She opened their shared email, the travel confirmations, the flight itinerary, the hotel booking. Only one name listed, Heron. He must have stepped out. Maybe his phone died? Her voice cracked. Maybe he just... She paused. Toby never left without telling her. He was glued to his phone. He always told her where he was going. Always. Even when they fought. Even when he was angry. This wasn't normal. This wasn't right. Panic bloomed like fire in her chest. Down at the front desk, she tried to stay composed. She smiled too hard, hoping it would keep her from breaking. Hi, I'm staying in room 602. I was just wondering, did my fiancé say anything when he left? Did he mention where he went? The woman at the desk looked apologetic. Fiancé? I'm sorry, ma'am. You checked in alone. Ifeyinwa blinked. What? Room 602 is reserved under a single guest. 1 night only. No, that's not right. We flew in together. His name is Toby Ajayi. He was just here. He... Her voice cracked. He booked this with me. The woman hesitated. There is no Mr. Ajayi listed anywhere in our system. Ifeyinwa stepped back, lightheaded. Her fingers trembled as she reached into her bag, searching for something, a receipt, a confirmation, proof that she wasn't going insane. He was just here, she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. He kissed me goodnight. We made plans. We talked about breakfast. The woman behind the counter stepped around to steady her. Ma'am, are you okay? Should I call someone? She made it back to the room before the tears exploded. She shut the door, pressed her back against it, and slid to the floor. Gone. He was just gone. No goodbye, no apology, no explanation. The man she gave everything to. Years of her life. All her money. Her trust. Had vanished. Her body started shaking. The cries came in waves, uncontrollable and loud. How could you? She gasped through sobs. How could you do this to me? She clawed at her phone, searching again for his name, his number, his email. Everything blocked, erased, deleted. You lied to me. You used me. I loved you. The ache settled in her chest like a stone, heavy, crushing. She wasn't just heartbroken. She was stranded, alone. No return flight, no backup plan, no money left in her account. She curled into herself on the carpeted floor, still wearing her pajamas, and cried until her voice was hoarse. Seoul moved around her, fast, indifferent, beautiful, unbothered. Ifeyinwa stood still in the middle of it all, her world shattered, but no one noticed. The phone slipped from her fingers as the automate message played again. The number you are trying to reach is unavailable. Please check the number and try again. She tried once more, and again, until finally, blocked. No, she whispered, clenching the phone. No, you wouldn't. But he would. He did. The final blow hit her as she opened her banking app, trembling fingers barely working. Her savings, her emergency fund, everything she thought she had left. Zero. She stared at the screen, unable to breathe. No. She tried logging into their shared flight portal. The itinerary was gone. She clicked her return flight. Cancelled. He took it, she muttered. He took it all. The world began to tilt. The once beautiful hotel room, sleek, glassy, modern, felt like a cage now. She stumbled outside, dragging her suitcase with her. The streets were loud, too loud. The signs blurred together in Hangul. The conversations passed her like wind. No one spoke to her. No one looked at her. And why would they? She was no one here. Just a girl with puffy eyes and no plan. A girl who gave her soul to a man who never planned to stay. She asked a man for directions to the embassy. He shook his head and walked away. She tried asking a woman about a bus route. The woman just smiled awkwardly and said in broken English, "Sorry, no speak." Ifeyinwa nodded quickly, forcing a smile that barely held her face together. "It's okay. I understand." But she didn't. She didn't understand any of this. Hours passed. The day turned gray. Her suitcase wheels dragged behind her with a pathetic squeak, hitting every bump in the pavement like a taunt. She didn't know where she was going. Her feet ached. Her lips were dry. Still, she walked, until she found a small park tucked behind a quiet street. A curved bench sat beneath a willow tree, its long strands fluttering in the breeze. Children played in the distance. Somewhere, music played faintly from a phone speaker. The scent of fried batter wafted from a nearby vendor stand. Life continued, but not for her. She sat down on the bench, stared ahead, didn't blink, didn't cry, just sat. She didn't know how long she sat there, but her shoulders started to shake. Her breath caught in her throat. Her jaw tightened as the first tear slipped down, then another, then all of them. And suddenly, she couldn't stop. "Why?" she sobbed, hands pressed to her face. "Why would you do this to me, Toby? I gave you everything. I believed in you when no one else did. I loved you even when you didn't love yourself. I fought for us." She rocked back and forth, a storm of grief crashing out of her chest. "And you just left me? Like I meant nothing? Like I'm disposable?" Her voice cracked, barely a whisper. "I don't know what to do. I don't even know where I am." People passed her, some sparing her a glance, most ignoring her completely. A foreign woman crying on a bench wasn't their concern. But in that moment, she wasn't just a woman who'd been abandoned. She was a stranger in a strange land, heartbroken, penniless, utterly, completely alone. Somewhere in the distance, laughter echoes. Leaves stir gently in the breeze. But on the park bench, beneath a drooping willow, Ifeyinwa sits motionless, cracked open from the inside out. Her tears had finally dried, not because the pain had stopped. No, the ache was still there, deep in her chest, but because she'd run out of strength to cry. Her arms were wrapped around her suitcase like it was all she had left in the world. Her head hung low, her back curled inward. Her phone sat beside her, screen dark. No calls, no messages, not even from the universe. "Guess that's it then," she mumbled bitterly. "Left me in a strange country with nothing but overpriced skincare samples and useless dreams." She gave a hollow laugh that cracked halfway through. The kind that wasn't really laughter at all. That's when she felt it. A soft, warm nudge at her ankle. She blinked slowly, then looked down. A small, white dog, fluffy, clean, no leash, stood at her feet, tilting its head as if trying to figure her out. Its tail wagged slowly. One ear flopped over the wrong way, giving it a slightly lopsided, goofy charm. "What?" she whispered. The dog wagged harder in response, then, without asking, hopped up onto the bench beside her and plopped itself down with a soft huff. Ifeyinwa blinked. I don't have food, you know." The dog said nothing, just stared. She exhaled shakily, then reached out to gently stroke its fur. It was warm, silky, real. "Don't look at me like that," she murmured. "You're gonna make me cry again." The dog, in true dog fashion, leaned in closer, resting his tiny head on her thigh. And for the first time since everything fell apart, Ifeyinwa let out a real sound. A soft, broken chuckle. "Okay, fine. You win. You can sit here. Just don't leave me too." She ran her fingers through its fur again, slower this time. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You're my only friend right now. You know that?" The dog gave a quiet sneeze, then snuggled in deeper like it understood everything. Minutes passed, maybe longer. Ifeyinwa leaned back, eyes closed, one hand still gently stroking the dog's back. "Hope," she whispered. "That's your name." She opened her eyes and looked down at the pup, because that's what you feel like. Hope gave a soft bark in response, then curled into a little donut shape, completely unbothered by the world. Ifeyinwa smiled faintly, the first real smile since she woke up alone that morning. Across the park, someone watched. A man leaned against a tree in the shadows just beyond the benches, arms crossed, sunglasses hiding his eyes, sharp suit, immaculate shoes, his expression unreadable. The dog wasn't supposed to be there. He'd been searching for her all morning. And now, she was curled up beside a foreign woman with tear-streaked cheeks and eyes too exhausted to care who was watching. He tilted his head slightly. "What are you doing, little troublemaker?" he muttered under his breath. His eyes lingered on the girl longer than he meant to. Then, without a word, he turned and walked away. The next day, a cloudy afternoon, Ifeyinwa is sitting on the same park bench with Hope beside her, both of them slightly more settled, but not by much. She's eating convenience store kimbap, slowly, distracted. Hope watches her chew with judgmental eyes. I know, she said with her mouth full. "Not exactly a gourmet meal, but unless you know where I can get free samgyeopsal, this is what we've got." Hope gave a small bark, unimpressed. Ifeyinwa sighed and offered a bit of rice. "You're spoiled already." That's when she heard the footsteps. Sharp, purposeful. Not the soft shuffle of joggers or strollers or grandmas with their little yappy dogs. These were expensive shoes. Commanding. She looked up and saw him. Tall, clean-cut, tailored suit so sharp it probably cost more than her flight ticket. Sunglasses, even with no sun. Jet black hair swept back with precision. His presence didn't just enter the park, it took up space, and he was staring at her, or rather, at Hope. "That's my dog," he said flatly, voice deep and cold like it hadn't been used in hours. Ifeyinwa blinked, still chewing. "Excuse me?" "The dog, you have it. She's mine." Hope barked in protest and scooted closer to Ifeyinwa's leg. Ifeyinwa instinctively wrapped an arm around the pup. "Okay, first of all, hi. Second of all, you might want to work on your approach because you sound like you're accusing me of kidnapping." "I am accusing you," he said without a trace of humor. "She went missing 2 days ago. I've been looking for her ever since." "Well, I didn't take her," she snapped, standing. "She came to me. I was crying, in case you couldn't tell from the dried tear crust on my face. And I didn't see a collar. No chip, no note taped to her butt saying, 'Property of rude men in expensive suits.'" He narrowed his eyes at her. "Are you always this defensive? Are you always this condescending?" They stood there for a beat. His jaw was tight. Her fists were clenched. Hope looked back and forth between them like she was watching a tennis match. Finally, he exhaled sharply. "I'm Jihoon Kang," he said, almost reluctantly, CEO of Kang Group. Ifeyinwa stared at him, unimpressed. "Cool. I'm Ifeyinwa, CEO of Nothing Left to Lose. That made something flicker across his face. Not quite a smile, not yet, but the smallest twitch of something not cold. Look, I didn't steal your dog, she said again, voice quieter now. I've had the worst few days of my life, and she's the first good thing that's happened. So if you're going to take her away, just don't do it like I'm some criminal. Jihoon looked at her, really looked at her. She was wearing the same clothes from yesterday, hair tied up hastily, eyes tired and dull, but her voice didn't shake. She stood tall, protective, strong. You're not from here, he said, more to himself. Number. And I don't have anyone here either. Just hope. He glanced down at the dog. Her name's actually Jongmi. Well, she didn't correct me when I renamed her. There it was again. That almost smile. Jihoon knelt down beside the dog. Hope didn't move, just watched him cautiously. You really didn't steal her? He asked one last time. No, she said softer now. She found me, like maybe she knew I needed someone. Jihoon exhaled, stood up and said, Keep her. Ifeyinwa blinked. Wait, what? She clearly likes you. I have 100 things to worry about. Let's make this easy. And just like that, he turned and walked away, his coat catching the breeze like he was in some kind of luxury brand commercial. Ifeyinwa had moved into a cheap guest house in a quieter part of the city. It wasn't much, but it had hot water, a real bed, and she could sneak Hope in at night. She'd been walking the dog near the Han River when she heard someone call out, You're still in the same clothes. She turned, startled, and there he was again, Jihoon Kang, crisp as ever, holding a coffee in one hand and a plain envelope in the other. You've been following me? She asked, eyeing him warily. Not exactly. Hope. Jangmi has a GPS tag I had deactivated. I turned it back on. She narrowed her eyes. So technically, you have been tracking me. You're welcome. She crossed her arms. Why are you here? Jihoon held out the envelope. Job offer. Excuse me? Temporary position. You clearly need money. I need someone she trusts. Someone unusual. She blinked. Unusual? You talk to dogs like they're people. That qualifies. Ifeyinwa couldn't believe it. You want me to be a dog nanny? Dog companion. You'll also assist with errands. Maybe translate basic English documents. We'll figure it out. Why would I even consider this? He met her eyes. Because something tells me you don't have a better option. She hated how true that felt. She looked down at Hope, who wagged her tail and barked once like she was voting yes. The world didn't become easier overnight, but it became quieter, safer, and for the first time in days, Ifeyinwa had space to breathe. The job came with a furnished studio, minimalist, modern, and just a short walk from Jihoon's penthouse tower. She still couldn't figure out why he went through all that trouble, but when she asked, he just said, She prefers to sleep near you. By she, he meant Hope, of course, but sometimes, when his eyes lingered too long, she wondered. At first, her days were simple. Walk the dog, run errands, organize documents for Jihoon's assistants, who were always busy and way too formal. Ifeyinwa was clumsy with the language, but she tried. She'd repeat phrases to herself in the mirror, practice bowing properly, memorize how to say thank you and sorry and I'm learning. At night, she'd collapse onto the small couch, Hope curled against her and whisper, We're not there yet, but we're not where we were. She didn't realize how much she'd changed until she passed a shop window one morning and saw herself. New coat, clean braids, lip gloss, shoulders no longer slumped, eyes brighter. Damn, she muttered with a half smile. Look at her. Meanwhile, Jihoon stayed distant, professional, cold. She needs 3 walks a day, 20 minutes minimum. Don't feed her from the table. Use this leash, not the blue one. The clasp sticks. He spoke like a man trying to avoid softness, like kindness would burn his tongue. But then there were moments, fleeting, quiet, when something shifted. Like the evening he came home early and found her sitting on the floor of his office, singing softly to Hope while brushing her fur. He stood in the doorway for longer than necessary, watching. When she noticed him and stopped, awkward, he simply said, "You have a nice voice," and walked away. It happened late one night. The sky broke open without warning, rain slapping the city like thunder. Ifeyinwa had just stepped outside Jihoon's building with Hope when the downpour hit. Crap. Okay, back inside, she muttered, fumbling with the leash as Hope whimpered and shook. She sprinted for the awning, soaked within seconds. Her jacket clung to her skin, and she cursed under her breath, laughing bitterly at her luck. Why is it always me getting hit with the dramatic weather? The door opened behind her. Jihoon stepped out holding a single black umbrella. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there, staring at her like he couldn't quite believe she was real. She looked up, droplets streaming down her face. "Don't just stand there, CEO Nim," she said with a tired grin. "Be a gentleman or get back inside." For a moment, nothing. Then he stepped closer and held the umbrella over her. They stood like that, close, silent, just the sound of the storm around them. "Why didn't you ask me for help?" he said quietly. She blinked. "Help with what?" "Everything. You've been surviving like the world owes you nothing." She looked away. "Because it doesn't." "But maybe I do." That made her look up again. His eyes were different, softer, open. "You're not my responsibility, Ifeyinwa, but every time I see you trying, I wish you were." Her breath caught. The umbrella shifted slightly. Rain touched her shoulders again, but she didn't move. Neither did he. Later that night, she found herself sitting across from him at the dining table, both of them wrapped in blankets, sipping hot tea. "You don't talk much," she said, watching steam rise from her mug. "I say what matters." Cold CEO logic. He glanced at her. Then, after a pause, "You make this place feel like less of a prison." The words stunned her. She didn't reply right away, just reached out to scratch behind Hope's ears and murmured, "Well, I guess that makes us even." He didn't smile, but his eyes softened, and for once, he didn't look away. It was just another evening. The city lights shimmered over the Han River, cool wind brushing through cherry blossoms blooming out of season. Ifeyinwa was walking with Hope beside her, dressed in soft cream tones and a quiet confidence she didn't know she could wear. That's when she heard it. "Ifeyinwa?" The sound of her name stopped her cold. That voice, that familiar ache. She turned slowly, and there he was. Toby, tailored suit, new watch, polished, sharp, clean cut. He looked like everything she once prayed for, but she didn't feel anything. Not anger, not longing, just nothing. "Toby," she said flatly. He stepped forward, looking uncertain for the first time in his life. "You look different." "Yeah, healing'll do that." "I didn't think I'd see you here." "You didn't plan to. You left me." He flinched. "Good." "I know. I messed up, okay? It wasn't supposed to go like that." "Then how was it supposed to go?" she snapped, voice rising. "You use me, drain me dry, fly me across the world and disappear like a damn ghost?" People walking nearby slowed down, sensing the tension. Toby lowered his voice, trying to reclaim control. I was scared. Of commitment. Of owing you something I couldn't give. You already owed me everything. She was trembling now, not with sadness, but with power. And you gave it to someone else. I made a mistake, Ifeyinwa, he said, reaching for her arm. She pulled back like he burned her. Don't touch me. You don't get to touch me. He looked genuinely desperate now. But look at you. You've made it. You're glowing. Maybe we could start over. I've changed. No, Toby, I changed. You just upgraded your wardrobe. Across the street, Jihoon saw it all. He stood beside his black car, coat unbuttoned, expression unreadable, but his jaw was clenched. He saw Toby touch her arm, saw her flinch, saw the way she stood her ground, fierce, divine, untouchable. But old wounds whispered lies in his ear. Maybe she still loved him. Maybe she would go back. He turned, about to walk away. Jihoon! Ifeyinwa called, spotting him from across the road. He froze. She jogged over, hope trailing behind. Wait, don't go. He didn't meet her eyes. I didn't want to interrupt. It's not what it looked like. You don't owe me an explanation. Well, I'm giving you one anyway, she said, breathless, because I want to. He finally looked at her, and the hurt in his eyes, it startled her. It's always the ex, isn't it? He said quietly. The one who gets the second chance. He doesn't get a second anything. But you hesitated. No, Jihoon, I breathed, that's all. I needed one breath to remember who I used to be, and how far I've come since I let him go. A pause. And then I saw you, and I remembered why I never want to go back. Jihoon blinked slowly, that cold wall cracking. I've never met anyone like you, he said. You drive me insane. You make me question everything. But every time I try to close the door, there you are, breaking through like sunlight. Jihoon, I love you, Ifeyinwa. I've never said that to anyone and meant it. Not like this. She stared at him. Tears welled up, but they didn't fall. Not this time. She reached out and took his hand. Then don't close the door again. He pulled her into his arms like he was finally letting himself feel everything. Hope barked once, then plopped down beside them, tail wagging like she'd been shipping this all along. Spring arrived in Seoul with soft winds and cherry blossoms that danced like they were celebrating her. Ifeyinwa stood in front of the embassy building, holding a stamped passport in one hand and a decision in the other. She could go back now, back to London, back to familiarity, to the apartment she hadn't stepped foot in since the day she boarded a plane thinking love would save her. But this time, it was different. She looked up at the sky, eyes steady, shoulders strong. I don't need to run, she whispered. Not anymore. She turned, walked past the embassy, and didn't look back. That evening, Jihoon was waiting outside her studio. No suit, no sunglasses, just him, hands in his pockets, wind brushing through his hair like he was part of the sky itself. You didn't tell me you were going to the embassy, he said softly as she approached. I needed to know if I was staying for you, or for me. And I'm staying for me. His throat bobbed slightly. She didn't miss the way his jaw tightened. Nervous. Good, he murmured. But I still want you to know you were never a temporary part of my life, Ifeyinwa. She stepped closer, heart quiet but full. Then say what you really want to say. Jihoon took a breath, a real one, and when he looked at her, he dropped everything he usually wore. Arrogance, control, distance. For once, he was just a man standing in front of the woman who changed his world. I love you, he said. No armor, no games. I love your voice when you're stubborn. I love how you protect things, even when you're broken. I love that you're not afraid to shine after being shattered. Jihoon, if you leave tomorrow, I'll survive, but I'll never meet anyone like you again. And if you stay, I'll spend every day making sure you never question if you're loved the way you deserve to be. A long silence. Hope barked once, tail wagging expectantly. Ifeyinwa didn't speak. She just stepped forward and kissed him. First, fierce, gentle, full of everything she'd never said. A kiss from a woman who had finally chosen herself and had room left to choose love, too. When they parted, she smiled. Then let's build something here, together. Not because we have to, because we want to. Weeks later, the city is glowing in golden light. The air smells like blooming magnolia. Ifeyinwa walks through a park in a cream sundress and soft gold jewelry, hand in hand with Jihoon. Hope trots happily ahead, leash loose, tongue out. They don't rush. They don't need to. They've already arrived. Ifeyinwa glances to her side. Jihoon is watching her again, like he always does now, like he still can't believe she's real. She squeezes his hand. I used to think love was something you had to suffer for, she says quietly. And now? She smiles up at him, radiant. Now I know. Real love makes you feel free. They walk toward the river, Hope barking playfully in the background. The wind catches her hair. The blossoms drift down like blessings. From heartbreak to happiness. From abandoned to adored. Her destiny found. The Seoul skyline shimmered outside her window, painted in a wash of gold and violet. Inside, the studio was quiet. Warm lights, blooming orchids, and the faint scent of vanilla from her evening tea. Ifeyinwa scrolled through the latest brand concepts on her tablet, her head tilted and her pencil resting against her lip. Jihoon had been trusting her more, really trusting her. His notoriously brutal board of directors had signed off on every one of her pitches. And next week, she was flying to Tokyo to help lead their first overseas expansion shoot. She was no longer surviving, she was thriving. Draped in tailored cream suits and soft silk scarves, fluent enough in Korean to speak up in meetings, always walking with Hope by her side, leash loose, head held high. She had become someone even she hadn't fully imagined. Then came the article, The Mystery Black Woman Beside Korea's Coldest CEO. A glossy, full-page piece. Photos of her walking beside Jihoon, their hands nearly brushing. A shot of Hope licking her cheek. A still of Jihoon holding the umbrella for her under spring rain. They called it enigmatic, unexpected, unprecedented. At first, she smiled, until the comments rolled in. He's only with her because she's exotic. She must have done something to trap him. Women like her always do. Is this what passes for beauty now? She tried not to read them, but Jihoon's silence didn't help. He didn't say much, just left his jacket on the back of her chair when he knew she was cold. Stayed later in meetings when she looked overwhelmed. Watched her a little longer than necessary when he thought she wasn't looking. Still, it wasn't enough to drown out the noise. And then it happened. Toby went public. Not with an apology, not with the truth, but with a perfectly polished lie. She wasn't abandoned. She chose to stay. I paid for the room. She knew the relationship was ending. She's just using the story for sympathy now. She stared at her screen in silence. The post had over 900 shares in the first hour. People were commenting under her brand's page, tagging Jihoon, dragging her name through hashtags and group chats. You okay? Jihoon asked quietly from across her apartment that night, as Hope rested in her lap. She didn't answer at first, just stared down at her phone, blinking like the words were static and not sentences. He lied, she whispered, and they believed him. Jihoon stood, walked over, and crouched down in front of her, His hands stayed in his pockets. His jaw was tight. "You don't have to explain anything," he said. "But I want to," she snapped, looking at him for the first time. Her eyes were glassy. "Because I spent months thinking I was crazy for what happened, that I misread everything. And now he gets to flip it, rewrite it like I'm the one who left?" He didn't touch her. Not yet. But when she broke, when her voice cracked and she whispered, "I loved him, Jihoon," he finally reached out. He took the tablet from her lap, set it aside, and placed his hands on either side of her face. His touch was soft, careful, steady. "He doesn't deserve your story," he said, "but if you need to scream it, I'll be right here to listen." Her throat tightened. "I'm not broken anymore," she whispered, unsure if it was meant for him or herself. "No," he said, "you're not. You're whole. That's why they're scared of you now." She let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Hope nuzzled her ankle, and outside, Seoul glowed, loud, bright, and relentless. But inside her little home, wrapped in the softness of Jihoon's voice, she found something stronger than comfort. She found clarity. The conference room was silent. Only the hum of the city outside and the low shuffle of papers filled the space. Jihoon stood at the head of the long glass table, hands in the pockets of his slate gray suit. His board members sat stiffly around him, each one more polished and more judgmental than the last. "It's not about her background," one of them said, though his voice was already laced with discomfort. "It's the narrative. The press is twisting it. She's become a distraction." "An unpredictable one," another added. "And we're in the middle of launching a global campaign. The optics matter." Jihoon's jaw flexed, but he said nothing. He didn't trust his voice to stay steady. Not when all he wanted to say was, "She's the reason your campaign even has heart. She's the reason I come into this room every day and fight to keep building." Instead, he gave a short nod and dismissed the meeting with a cold, "Noted." That evening, his penthouse felt colder than usual. Too many rooms. Too much silence. Too many screens replaying Ifeyinwa's name like a wound that wouldn't close. She'd sent him 3 messages. Nothing urgent. Just her being her. "Hope chewed through your necktie again. Sorry. Did you eat today? Come over. No pressure. Just come home." He hadn't replied. Instead, he stood alone in the shadows of his living room, staring out at Seoul, a city that loved him because it feared him, a city that only respected strength and punished softness. And Ifeyinwa, she was everything they'd never accept. He loved her. But that love made him weak in front of people who were already sharpening their knives. The knock came softly, then again, louder. He didn't move until the door creaked open and her voice slipped through like light under a door. "You really weren't going to answer?" He turned slowly. There she was, her braids tied up in a loose bun, Hope trotting in after her like she'd been here 1,000 times. She walked straight past him into the kitchen, grabbed a bottle of water from his fridge, and finally looked at him. "Say it," she whispered. "Say whatever it is you've been holding in your throat." Jihoon's mouth opened, closed, then finally, "You're strong, Ifeyinwa. You've always been strong, but I can't let you burn for me." Her brows furrowed. "Excuse me? They're coming for you. For us. And they won't stop. They don't see you the way I do. They never will. And I can't watch them rip you apart in headlines just because I—" His voice faltered. He looked away. "Because you what?" she pressed. "Because I love you." The silence after that was sharp, sacred. She set the bottle down and stepped forward. "Then fight for me," she said, steady and clear. "Or at least, Don't push me away under the guise of protection. It's not that simple. Yes, it is, her voice cracked. I didn't survive heartbreak, abandonment, and an entire world of people who told me I didn't belong just to be treated like a weakness now that I'm finally strong. He flinched, but didn't look away. You're not a weakness, he said quietly. You're the only thing in my life I'm afraid of losing. She inhaled slowly, stepped closer. Then hold on tighter, because I'm not going anywhere, Jihoon. But if you let this fear dictate how you love me, you will. And then, finally, he pulled her in. Not like a man trying to claim something, but like someone who had been aching for home. She rested her head against his chest, her arms sliding around his waist. Hope circled their feet once, then curled up on the rug. They'll keep talking, he murmured into her hair. Let them, she whispered. They're not living our life. We are. It started with a quiet whimper. Just past midnight, Ifeyinwa stirred on the couch, the flicker of a muted Kdrama still glowing on the screen. Jihoon had fallen asleep beside her, head tilted back, tie loosened, posture finally soft after a long day. Then she heard it again, low, sharp, hope. Ifeyinwa sat up fast. Baby, she whispered, reaching for her. The small pup lay on the rug, curled in tighter than usual, her little chest rising in uneven bursts. Jihoon woke instantly at the sound of her panic. What's wrong? Something's wrong with Hope, she breathed, scooping the dog into her arms. She's not moving like normal. Hope whimpered again, her eyes dull, her body limp against Ifeyinwa's chest. Jihoon was already on his feet, grabbing his car keys. Let's go. The emergency vet clinic was quiet except for the ticking clock and Ifeyinwa's anxious pacing. Her hoodie was halfway zipped, her braids hastily tied back, tears clinging to her lashes like they were waiting for permission to fall. Jihoon sat on the plastic bench, hands clasped together, eyes on her. He'd never seen her this undone. Not even after Toby, not even when the headlines got cruel. She was just playing this morning, Ifeyinwa whispered, arms crossed tight over her chest. She chased a butterfly. She barked at the mop. He didn't know what to say, so he stood, crossed the room, and opened his arms. She hesitated only a second before walking straight into them. What if she doesn't make it? She choked into his chest. She's our story, Jihoon. She's how we found each other. She's stronger than she looks, he murmured. Just like someone else I know. The vet returned an hour later with a clipboard and gentle eyes. We've stabilized her. She likely ate something off the street. Could have been chocolate or a toxin. We'll need to keep her overnight. Ifeyinwa exhaled, her knees nearly giving out. Jihoon caught her by the waist, steadying her. She's going to be okay, the vet added with a smile. You got her here in time. That night, they didn't go home. They sat in Jihoon's car in the empty parking lot, soft jazz playing faintly from the speakers, the city lights a distant echo in the dark. She leaned against the window, arms folded. I keep thinking, maybe if I was paying more attention, she wouldn't have... Don't, Jihoon cut in gently. You didn't fail her. You saved her. Silence. Just the soft hum of the heater, the quiet beat of two people holding their breaths for something they loved. You love so hard it scares people, Jihoon said at last, voice quiet but clear. But I think, he looked at her, eyes soft, I'm done being scared. She turned to him, stunned. Jihoon! It used to terrify me, how easily you give your heart. But tonight, I watched you fall apart over a 10-pound dog, and I've never wanted to be loved harder in my life. Her lip trembled. Then she reached across and took his hand and whispered, Then stop watching and let me love you. The sun had barely risen when they brought her home. Hope blinked sleepily from the soft blanket bundled in Ifeyinwa's arms, her little tail giving a weak, slow wag as they stepped through the apartment door. "We're home, baby," Ifeyinwa whispered, pressing her cheek against the top of the pup's head. "You did so good." Jihoon stood beside her, holding the vet's instructions like it was the most important contract of his life. He hadn't slept. There were shadows under his eyes. His collar was still rumpled from the night before, but his gaze never left the tiny creature curled against her. Hope let out a soft whine, and Ifeyinwa immediately kissed her head. "Shh, I know. She moved carefully, kneeling on the floor near the sofa and setting Hope in the little nest they'd built out of folded blankets and one of Jihoon's hoodies, the soft one she always stole. Hope turned in a slow circle, then plopped down with a quiet sigh. That was when it hit. The tears. Sudden, overwhelming. Ifeyinwa clutched the edge of the couch and started to cry. Really cry, with every bit of fear and panic she hadn't let out at the vet's office. She tried to muffle it, but her breath hitched, and the sound cracked something wide open. Jihoon dropped beside her instantly. "Hey," he said, voice low, reaching for her. "Don't hold it in now." She fell into him, burying her face into his chest as he wrapped his arms around her. His grip was firm, grounding, but gentle. "She could have died," she choked. "And I don't know what I would have done. She's all I have." "You have more than her," Jihoon murmured, brushing his lips against her temple. "You have me too. You've always had me." She blinked up at him, eyes glassy. "But you don't say that." He hesitated. Then, with a breath that sounded like surrender, "Then let me start now." Hope let out a tiny snore. Soft, rhythmic, safe. Ifeyinwa laughed through her tears, wiping her cheeks. "You hear that? She's already back to judging us." "She's strong," Jihoon said, "just like her mom." He paused, then added almost shyly, "And maybe her dad too." Ifeyinwa looked at him, stunned for a moment. Then she reached out and grabbed his hand. "Okay, dog dad, but if you're going to claim the title, you're doing midnight bathroom duty." "Done?" he said without hesitation, lips quirking into a rare, sleepy smile. They sat like that on the floor. Two people who had once been strangers, now held together by loyalty, love, and 10 pounds of soft fur. Outside, the sky turned lavender. Inside, the only sound was the soft rise and fall of Hope's breathing, and the quiet click of Jihoon's heart, finally starting to open. The idea came quietly, not during a dramatic moment, not after a crisis. It came in a whisper, while she was sitting at a cafe near Han River, sipping jasmine tea, watching a girl on the street struggle to translate directions on her phone. The girl looked barely 20, wide-eyed, alone, familiar. Something tugged inside her chest. Ifeyinwa stood up, walked over, and offered help. In gentle Korean, rough around the edges, but warm. The girl blinked at her in surprise, then relief. "You speak Korean?" "Not well," Ifeyinwa smiled, "but well enough to get lost with you." That night, she opened her journal for the first time in weeks. The pages had once been filled with pain, confusion, heartbreak, but now, her hand moved differently. What if the next woman like me doesn't have to feel alone? What if she knows where to go, who to call, how to breathe without apologizing for existing? She called it Second Sun, a creative agency, built for women like her, immigrants, dreamers, builders, believers, women who knew what it felt like to be invisible, and were done shrinking. By the time Jihoon heard about it, she'd already built a team, a lawyer who'd been denied jobs because of her hijab, a photographer who'd been told she'd never look Korean enough, an artist who only spoke Tagalog but could paint entire stories with a single brushstroke. Ifeyinwa walked into their rented loft space one morning, sunlight spilling across worn hardwood floors, and felt something she hadn't felt since landing in Seoul. Peace, purpose, power. That evening, Jahoon found her still at her desk, surrounded by sketches and strategy boards. "You've been working late," he said softly, leaning against the doorframe. She glanced up and grinned, smudged mascara under her eyes, sleeves rolled up, a paint pen tucked behind her ear. "So have you," she teased. "Who do you think I learned it from?" He walked over, slid an arm around her from behind, chin resting lightly on her shoulder. "What is all this?" "It's mine," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Finally." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "You know, you were never just mine," he said. She turned slightly, raising a brow. "You mean you don't own me?" "I'm just realizing," he said, a smile ghosting over his lips. "You were never meant to be anyone's. You were meant to lead." She looked down at the flyer in her hands, one for a workshop called Voice Without Apology. "I think I needed to fall apart to realize that," she whispered. "And now?" She looked back at him, eyes gleaming with tears she wasn't ashamed of anymore. "Now I'm writing the story I needed when I was alone, and this time, I'm not writing it just for me." It was raining. Of course it was. Ifeyinwa hadn't planned to see him again, especially not like this. She had just stepped out of her office building, umbrella in one hand, tote bag in the other, when she heard the voice. "Ifeyinwa." She turned, slowly. There he was. Toby. Suit wrinkled, eyes tired, hair slightly damp from the rain, like he'd been standing there for hours trying to gather the courage. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice calm, firm. He stepped closer. "I've been trying to reach you." "I know. I've been ignoring you on purpose." He swallowed hard. "I don't want to cause trouble. Can I talk to you?" 5 minutes. That's all." She studied him for a long, quiet moment. Then she exhaled. 5. They ended up under the awning of a nearby shop. The city moved around them, busy and bright and uncaring. "I saw the article," he began. "The company. You, Jahoon. All of it." "Good for you," she said softly. "You get Wi-Fi now." "I deserve that," he muttered. She raised a brow. "You deserve a hell of a lot more." He laughed once, but it was hollow, empty. "You want to know why I left you in Seoul?" he asked, voice shaking. "No," she said, "but you're going to tell me anyway." He hesitated. "Then, because I hated myself." She blinked. "I was broke, useless, living on your couch, eating your food, watching you go to work every day while I stayed home, sending out useless resumes, and watching my pride die one click at a time." "So you punished me for helping you?" "No," he said quickly. "That's the thing. I never hated you. I hated how you looked at me, like I was still worth something, like I wasn't failing. That kind of love, it made me feel even smaller." "So you ran," she whispered, "because being loved was too heavy for your ego." "Because I couldn't handle being kept," he snapped. "Every time you handed me money, every time you said, 'It's okay, I've got you,' I felt like less of a man." "Then you were never much of one." Silence. Sharp and clean. "I thought leaving would give you freedom," he said, voice cracking. "I told myself you'd move on faster if I just disappeared." "You didn't disappear," she said coldly. "You left me stranded in a foreign country. You canceled my return ticket. You drained my savings. You erased me." His shoulders slumped. "I thought if I stayed, I'd have to watch you realize I'd never be enough. You weren't, she said, but not for the reasons you think. He looked up. You weren't too poor. You weren't too lost. You weren't too broken. You were too cowardly. You were scared of the mirror I held up to you. And instead of doing the work, you smashed the mirror. She stepped back. I'm sorry you were drowning, she said softly, but you didn't have to pull me under with you. I know, he whispered. I know that now. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. Whether it was rain or tears, she didn't care anymore. You look happy, he added almost reverently. You look like someone who's loved right. I am. Do you forgive me? She tilted her head. I forgive myself. That's all I needed. And with that, she turned and walked away, into the rain, into her life, into her power. It was a quiet Sunday morning, the kind that tasted like warm tea and slow music, like linen sheets and the soft thump of hope's paws on hardwood. The city moved gently outside the windows, but inside, everything was still. Sacred. Ifeyinwa stood in the kitchen wearing one of Jihoon's old t-shirts, flipping pancakes as Hope stared at her from her dog bed like a tiny supervisor. You've already eaten, she said, laughing. You're not getting more just because you look cute. Jihoon leaned against the doorframe, watching her, heart too full to speak. The light hit her skin like it knew her name. She turned and paused. He was holding something in his palm, small, gold, delicate. She blinked. What's that? He walked forward, slow and certain, and set it on the kitchen counter between them. A key, simple, elegant, warm like it had already been held 1,000 times. To the place I built for us, he said softly. She stared at it. It's not a castle, no butlers, no elevator that sings when you walk in. He paused, his voice steady but low. But it's ours. Every detail, every wall, every choice. I made it thinking of you, of Hope, of us. Hope wagged her tail like she understood the assignment. Ifeyinwa's breath hitched. Jihoon, you can walk away, he added, his eyes not leaving hers. I'll still love you. You don't owe me anything. Not your yes, not your presence. Just know that if you choose this, I'll spend every day making sure it feels like home. She picked up the key slowly, her fingers trembling. It was warm, solid, real. She looked at him, then at Hope, then back at him. And suddenly, all the noise in her life, the heartbreak, the headlines, the fear, fell away. Home sounds perfect, she whispered, smiling through tears. He pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her neck, holding her like she was everything he'd never dared to ask for. Hope barked once, tail wagging like she was giving her blessing. You sure this place allows dogs? Ifeyinwa teased, her voice muffled against his chest. She came with the key, Jihoon murmured, smiling. And that morning, in a small kitchen that smelled like cinnamon and safety, they said yes, without needing a ring, a kneel, or an audience. Just love, just presence, just home. The invitation came like a command. Dinner, Sunday, 7 p.m. Don't be late. Jihoon showed it to her like he was handing her a bomb. Ifeyinwa just raised a brow. Your mother always this warm? She's not usually this generous, he muttered. I've never brought anyone home before. Oh, she thinks no one's ever good enough. Oh, she said again, then smiled. She's going to love me. Jihoon's mother was the embodiment of grace wrapped in steel. Black silk hanbok, diamond studs, lips like a line drawn with a ruler. The kind of woman who could ruin a man's entire career with a glance. She barely acknowledged Ifeyinwa as she entered. You're late, she said, though the clock read 6:59. Right on time, Ifeyinwa replied gently. But I understand punctuality matters more when people assume you have something to prove. Jihoon almost choked on his water. His mother raised a single brow. You speak well. I do everything well, Ifeyinwa said with a calm smile, especially under scrutiny. A pause. Then, I see. They sat. They ate. And every forkful felt like it might come with a test. Jihoon's mother asked pointed questions about Ifeyinwa's background, education, citizenship, intentions. You're building a company, she asked, like the idea didn't fully register. Yes, for immigrant women, so they don't have to rely on charity or pity to be seen, so they can stand. Interesting, she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. And what do you bring into his world? Ifeyinwa met her gaze directly. Stability, peace, fire when it's needed, and the kind of love that doesn't beg to be proven. Jihoon's chopsticks froze midair. His mother said nothing. Not then. After dinner, Jihoon stood at the door with his mother. She glanced back at Ifeyinwa, who was wiping Hope's tiny paws by the mat. She's not what I expected, she said softly. I know. She's stronger than she looks. She's the strongest person I've ever met, Jihoon said. His mother looked at her son, something unreadable flickering in her expression. Good. You'll need someone like her. Wait, Jihoon blinked. You approve? I didn't say that, she replied crisply, then added with a hint of amusement, but I do like her. You just gave her the verbal version of a handshake, Jihoon muttered. I'm going to give her much more, she said, smiling. Weeks later, Jihoon's mother invited Ifeyinwa to tea. No press, no expectations, just porcelain cups and mooncakes. I wasn't fair to you at first, she said, pouring the tea carefully. I didn't need fair. I needed real. You remind me of my younger self, before I traded softness for strategy. A pause. Don't trade yours, she said, more gently. The world needs women who lead with fire and grace. Ifeyinwa smiled. I think we just became friends. Not friends, Jihoon's mother replied. Then what? She looked her in the eyes. Family. They didn't want a ballroom, they wanted light. So they chose a rooftop garden overlooking the Han River, filled with magnolias, pale roses, and soft lavender mist. The city sparkled behind them, but all the chaos felt miles away. There were only 30 guests, just the people who knew their story, not just their names. Chairs curved in a crescent around a floral arch wrapped in soft gold cloth, whispering with the wind. Hope trotted down the aisle first, wearing a delicate flower crown and tiny satin paws. The crowd melted. She's the real star, Ifeyinwa whispered to Jihoon before the ceremony. I just paid for the flowers, he deadpanned. Ifeyinwa's dress wasn't white. It was gold, soft, liquid gold that shimmered with every breath she took. Braids woven into an elegant crown, gold cuffs on her wrists, a queen who walked through fire and made it fashion. Jihoon waited at the altar in a deep charcoal suit with a gold-threaded pocket square, his breath caught halfway in his chest as she walked toward him. Not floating, walking. Like she chose this. Like she owned this. Hope sat between them at the altar, tail thumping softly. No efficient. Just them. Their words, their truth. You loved me before I believed I was worth loving, Jihoon said. You stood by me before I knew how to stay still. You gave me softness when all I offered was silence. And now, I give you every version of myself. Loud, quiet, afraid, strong. Because if love is a home, you are the key. Ifeyinwa, with tears running down her cheeks, said, I didn't survive for love. I survived for me. But loving you, that's been my joy. You never rescued me. You stood beside me while I rescued myself. And now, I choose you. Every day, every quiet morning, every thunderstorm. I choose you, Jihoon, and Hope too, obviously. Hope barked once, right on cue. Laughter broke out. So did tears. They didn't dance a traditional first dance. They slow danced barefoot under fairy lights, while Hope sat curled up between their feet, leash tied gently to Jihoon's wrist. When the song ended, Jihoon whispered something into Ifeyinwa's ear. She burst out laughing. "What did he say?" someone asked. "He said," she called out, wiping tears, "we're adopting another dog." Hope barked again, probably in protest. They stood on the edge of the rooftop, arms around each other, city lights shimmering below, Hope pressed between them. No audience, no noise, just the woman who rewrote her own ending, the man who finally let softness in, and the dog who carried their hearts through it all. "You happy?" he asked, whispering against her temple. "So much it hurts," she smiled, "but the good kind." And together they walked back inside. Home. The new house was quiet. Too quiet. After weeks of wedding chaos, flower deliveries, guest list drama, and Hope trying to eat her floral collar every 5 seconds, the silence was weird. Peaceful, but weird. Ifeyinwa stood in the doorway of the bedroom, barefoot, hair loose, wrapped in one of Jihoon's oversized t-shirts, the one with the little tear near the collar she refused to let him throw away. Jihoon came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, his lips brushing the side of her neck. "Still want to back out?" he teased softly. She snorted. "After you married me, gave me a new house, and let our dog wear a flower crown at the ceremony? Please, I'm locked in." They stepped into the bedroom, warm cream sheets, soft amber lighting, scented candles flickering low. Romantic, dreamy, until they both stopped and stared at the bed, at Hope, sprawled dead center, legs stretched in every direction, completely unconscious and snoring like she paid the mortgage. "No," Jihoon said flatly, "absolutely not." "You said she comes with the key," Ifeyinwa reminded him, barely holding back laughter. "That was before I knew she'd take the entire bed. Is this dog even small anymore? She's expanded." Hope opened one eye, blinked, flopped over dramatically like a diva on set. "She thinks this is her honeymoon," Ifeyinwa whispered. "It's our honeymoon," Jihoon growled, walking to the side of the bed. "Hope, office. Come on, girl." She yawned in his face. "She's mocking you," Ifeyinwa said, climbing in from the other side. Jihoon sat on the edge and gave her the most serious look he'd ever worn. "I am a CEO. I've negotiated billion-1 mergers. I've taken down hostile investors. I will not lose this bed to a 12-pound cotton ball." Ifeyinwa blinked innocently. "Then take her off." Jihoon reached out. Hope growled. "She's bluffing." Hope snarled. He slowly pulled his hand back. "I think she wants to fight me." Ifeyinwa was howling now, literally doubled over in laughter. She kissed Jihoon's cheek, then flopped down beside Hope, spooning her like a toddler. "You lose." "Unbelievable," Jihoon muttered, pulling off his shirt with dramatic flair and collapsing on the tiny corner of the bed left for him. "There's always the couch," she teased, eyes sparkling. "This is my house. It's Hope's now." Hope let out one satisfied sigh and sprawled deeper into the center of the bed like a royal. Hours later, Jihoon woke up with his face smushed into Hope's fur, one arm draped over Ifeyinwa's waist. He looked at both of them, sighed, and whispered, "I married into a cult." But his smile never left, because honestly, this was exactly the kind of forever he signed up for. The golden light of early morning slipped gently through the linen curtains, brushing against the cream walls like a kiss. Hope was sprawled across the foot of the bed like royalty, snoring softly, one ear twitching in her sleep. Her paws were tangled in the edge of Jihoon's discarded hoodie, and her little belly rose and fell like she had no idea the world could ever be unkind. Ifeyinwa padded across the wooden floor in her bare feet, wrapped in one of Jihoon's oversized t-shirts. Her braids were loosely tied up. The scent of honey toast and jasmine tea curled in the air like a lullaby. She stood by the stove, flipping pancakes with one hand and pouring tea with the other. The light from the window hit her skin like it belonged there. Jihoon walked in, half awake, half buttoned, and entirely hers. His sleeves were rolled, hair a mess, and his eyes softened instantly at the sight of her. He didn't say anything at first, just came up behind her, slid his arms around her waist, and rested his chin on her shoulder. "Married 6 months, and you still cook breakfast like we just met," he murmured. "I like feeding you. It's the one thing that shuts you up," Ifeyinwa said, smirking. He chuckled and kissed her cheek, then reached over, stole a slice of fruit from the cutting board, and popped it into his mouth. "Hey, that was for Hope," Ifeyinwa said, smiling. "She's asleep. She'll never know," said Jihoon. Hope snorts loudly in her sleep, as if offended from the dream realm. They both laughed. The house was filled with small things now. A stack of books on the windowsill, fresh flowers she picked up from the street vendor on Saturdays, a half-finished bookshelf she built herself, a dog bed in every room, but only one that Hope actually used. It was the most expensive one, obviously. There was no drama here, no tension, just breathe and warmth. She handed Jihoon his tea. Ifeyinwa said quietly, almost to herself, "It's quiet." Jihoon raised an eyebrow, sipping his tea. "You say that like it's suspicious." "We've never had quiet before. Not like this," she said. She looked out the window, her fingers trailing the steam from her mug. "Sometimes I still wake up and wait for something to go wrong." Jihoon smiled softly. "Same. But we don't have to live like that anymore. We're not running, not fighting, just being," Jihoon said firmly. Hope let out a little bark in her sleep. A protest? A dream? Who knows? Ifeyinwa smiled. She doesn't trust peace either. She learned from the best. She leaned back against him. He wrapped his arms tighter. "This still feels unreal sometimes," she murmured. "It's real. I know because you let me drink the expensive tea this morning," he said. She laughed into his shoulder, and for a moment, neither of them said a word. They didn't need to. The quiet held them, software steady, full, and for once in their lives, stillness didn't feel like waiting for disaster. It felt like home. It started with the hallway incident. Every time Ifeyinwa left the room, even just to grab a charger, Hope was on her heels like a shadow with fur. Her tiny paws echoed through the apartment like a bodyguard in training, nails clicking anxiously on the floorboards. She wasn't being clingy. She was being watchful. "You know I'm not going far, right?" Ifeyinwa said. Hope let out a tiny bark, immediately giving a side eye. It was after dinner. Ifeyinwa had just finished cleaning up, her hands still warm from dishwater. Jihoon stepped behind her, arms wrapping around her waist, lips moving toward her neck, only to be met by a low, threatening growl. Hope was on the kitchen floor, eyes locked on him, tail stiff, ears forward. Jihoon's attempt kiss froze midair. "Did this dog just warn me?" Ifeyinwa burst out laughing. "She's jealous. You've been hogging me." "We've talked about this. I was here first," Jihoon said to Hope, dramatic. Hope growled again, softer this time, but still serious. Unbelievable. By nightfall, it got even weirder. Hope refused to sleep in her usual spot. No matter how many times Jihoon fluffed up her expensive orthopedic dog bed, she jumped back on the bed and curled tightly around Ifeyinwa's stomach. Not beside her, not near her feet, directly over her belly, like she was shielding something. Ifeyinwa, lying still, whispered, "Okay, this is new." Jihoon stood watching from the other side, arms folded. She's acting like there's a tiny queen inside you, and she's the royal guard. Hope opened one eye, slowly, deliberately, and closed it again. "That's not a denial," Jihoon muttered. The next morning, Ifeyinwa tried to step into the shower. Hope scratched at the bathroom door. She went to grab a delivery bag. Hope blocked the front door like a bouncer. She sneezed once. Hope panicked. That evening, Jihoon sat on the couch with a notebook in his lap, pretending to work, while Hope lay curled in the crook of Ifeyinwa's side, breathing in sync with her. "I love her. I do. But at this point, I'm considering charging her rent," Jihoon said. Ifeyinwa laughed, ruffling Hope's ears. "She's just being protective. Dogs do that." Jihoon raised an eyebrow. "Do dogs sense things? Like health stuff?" he asked. Ifeyinwa teasing, "Why? Worried she knows your blood pressure's too high from all that coffee?" "No, Wait, are you feeling different lately?" Jihoon asked. She paused, just for a moment, and said quietly, "Maybe a little more tired. But I thought it was work stress." "Or?" he asked. Hope tail thumps, whined softly. They both looked at her. Hope simply blinked, curled closer to Ifeyinwa's middle, and exhaled like a grandma who knew everything and wasn't about to explain. Jihoon shaking his head, "I swear if she's right." Ifeyinwa smiled. "Then we'll owe her another flower crown." It started with a wave of dizziness while folding laundry. Not intense, just enough to make her pause. Then there was the fatigue, not tired like "I didn't sleep," but tired like her bones were full, like rest was never quite enough. By the third day, she could barely take the smell of coffee without flinching. She didn't say anything at first, just rubbed her temples and took deeper breaths. But Hope noticed. Of course she did. That evening, Jihoon caught her leaning against the kitchen counter, a hand on her lower back, eyes closed. Jihoon teased her lightly. "Either the kitchen's hugging you back or something's going on." She opened her eyes slowly, giving him a tired smile. "I'm just off. Maybe a bug, maybe stress," she said. Jihoon gently, watching her, said, "Or maybe it's time for that test." She blinked. "You think?" Jihoon shrugs. "I think Hope's been staring at your stomach for 3 days straight. And she's better at diagnostics than most doctors." Hope let out a small huff from the couch, as if validating his point. Later, Ifeyinwa stood alone in the bathroom. The box trembled slightly in her hands. Hope was curled just outside the door, paws splayed protectively, eyes alert. The minutes dragged. Her heart thudded like a drum she couldn't quiet. She couldn't remember breathing. When the result appeared, she just stared. 2 lines. Clear. Definite. Her hands began to shake. She sank onto the closed toilet lid, the stick still in her lap, her other hand clutched over her mouth. Ifeyinwa whispering to herself, "Oh my God." Hope gave a soft, high-pitched whine outside the door, as if she'd felt the moment shift, as if she knew. Tears welled and spilled before she could stop them. Not sadness, not fear, just something bigger than words. The door creaked open slowly. Jihoon stepped in, tentative, eyes scanning her face. Then he saw it, the test in her lap, her trembling shoulders, her tear-streaked cheeks. He didn't speak right away. just knelt in front of her, slowly, deliberately, like it was something sacred. He rested his forehead against hers. They stayed like that, still and folded into each other, as the world tipped on its axis. Jihoon whispered, his voice hoarse, "We're not ready." She breathed, shaky but whole. Their noses touched, their tears mingled. Ifeyinwa barely a breath, "But we're enough." A soft, judgmental bark came from behind them. They both turned. Hope was standing in the doorway now, tail wagging gently. But her eyes, very serious. Jihoon, choking out a laugh. "She's already over it." Ifeyinwa, wiping her tears and smiling through them, said, "No." Hope saying, "Finally." They laughed, exhausted and overjoyed all at once. And right there, on the bathroom floor with a dog as their midwife and love sitting quietly between them, they took their first breath as something new, a family. In their bedroom at 2:04 a.m., the world outside is asleep, but inside, a gentle unraveling. The room was quiet, except for Hope's soft breathing, her tiny snores rising and falling like waves. She was sprawled between them on top of the blanket. One paw flopped across Jihoon's chest like she owned the bed. The window was cracked open. A cool breeze stirred the curtains. The city lights flickered outside like distant stars. But sleep? Nowhere to be found. Ifeyinwa lay awake, her head turned toward the ceiling. One hand rested over her stomach, absent-minded, instinctively. Jihoon stirred beside her, then shifted. "You're still awake?" he asked softly. "Can't stop thinking," Ifeyinwa said. "Same," he said. A long silence. Then she turned slightly toward him in the dim light. "Do you ever think about what kind of parents we'll be?" Ifeyinwa asked quietly. Jihoon exhales. "Every day since the test." She gave a soft, breathy laugh, but her eyes weren't playful. "I keep wondering what they'll face, what the world will see before they ever say a word. Black, Korean, mixed, different. What happens when the world wants to put them in a box and they don't fit any?" He didn't answer immediately, just lay there, listening, feeling her words sink into his chest. Then he spoke, low, careful, like peeling open something he hadn't looked at in years. "My mother used to tell me not to cry at the dinner table. She said it made the soup taste bitter." Ifeyinwa blinked, surprised. He never spoke about his childhood. Jihoon continued, "I was 6. I'd gotten in trouble at school. I was scared, ashamed, trying not to cry, and she said it like it was strategy. Everything in my house was about performance, what people see, how they speak your name when you're not around." He paused, his eyes on the ceiling. "I think part of me didn't know how to be soft. Until you." Hope shifted in her sleep, letting out a sigh between them. "Do you think I'll be too soft?" Ifeyinwa asked. Jihoon turned to her. "Number? I think you'll be exactly what they need." She stared at him, eyes rimmed with quiet worry. Ifeyinwa barely a whisper. "I don't want them to feel out of place. Not in this country, not in their skin, not even at home." Jihoon reached for her hand, their fingers tangling gently. "They'll know love like it's air," he said. She smiled, tears brimming but not falling. Ifeyinwa whispering, "And they'll never wonder if they belong." "Not for a second," Jihoon said. They stayed there, fingers laced, hearts steady. In the glow of that 2 a.m. hush, with hope sleeping between them and the promise of someone new quietly growing inside her, they spoke the kind of truth that doesn't need fixing, just naming, and maybe that was enough. The city had begun to quiet. The wind moved gently through the trees, rustling early spring leaves with a hush that felt like peace in motion. The sky was bathed in soft gold, that in-between hour where day leans toward night but isn't quite ready to let go. They walked hand in hand. Hope trotted just ahead, her tiny sweater buttoned up the front, tail flicking with confidence. She had a pep in her step, like she owned the entire block. As they turned a familiar corner, Ifeyinwa slowed. Ifeyinwa said softly, "This is it. This is where I found her." They stopped. There was the bench, still the same. A little worn, one side of it chipped. "You didn't find her. She found you," Jihoon said. Ifeyinwa smiled, eyes distant but warm. "She saved me." Jihoon said nothing for a moment, then gently tugged her hand. "Come on, there's something I want," he said, smiling. They ended up at a food cart on a quiet side street, tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop that smelled like lavender and ink. He bought them hartak, fresh off the pan, warm syrup oozing from the center, steam curling in the air. Ifeyinwa laughed. "You always get it all over your face." Jihoon was already chewing. "That's part of the experience," he said with a mouthful. She reached up and wiped a dot of syrup from his chin with her thumb, the way you do when you've done it 100 times and still want to do it 100 more. Jihoon, watching her, quietly said, "You do that every time." "Because you forget every time," she said with a smile. He caught her wrist gently in his hand, turned it, kissed her fingers, slow and deliberate, like it was the first time, like he hadn't already kissed every inch of her a dozen times. Jihoon softly, eyes steady on her. "Everything good in my life started with you. Or the dog, one of you." She burst out laughing, nudging him with her shoulder. "Hope is the backbone of this family," Ifeyinwa said. Hope barked once from behind them, probably in agreement. They kept walking, slowly, no destination. Just the feel of sidewalk underfoot and Seoul glowing around them. And as the breeze stirred her coat and his fingers brushed hers again, they both understood something they never used to believe. Love doesn't always have to fight to be real. Sometimes it just walks beside you, quietly, software, on purpose. The room was smaller than they remembered. They had walked into it with paint cans and wild ideas. Something modern, soft beige with golden moons and stars, maybe a splash of green. But now that the furniture boxes were open and Hope had claimed a corner rug, it looked like a war zone. Jihoon grumbled, "How does this piece connect to any of the diagrams?" He sat cross-legged on the floor, frowning at the crib instructions like they'd personally insulted his ancestors. Ifeyinwa stood barefoot in old sweats and one of his hoodies, holding a roller soaked in pastel green paint. A stripe of it was already across her cheek. "Maybe if you stopped refusing to look at the YouTube tutorial," she said. "I went to business school. I should be able to build a crib," Jihoon said. Ifeyinwa deadpanned. "That explains everything." Hope, unbothered, let out a loud huff from her throne of pillows, which was currently short one because she had chewed through the corner of a decorative cushion and left stuffing like snow all over the floor. Ifeyinwa laughed. "She's making her opinion on the color scheme very clear." "I think that was her protest against not being allowed to sleep in the crib," Jihoon said. "She's lucky she still has a bed after yesterday," said Ifeyinwa. They locked eyes, then both burst into laughter. Later, with the crib finally upright, though slightly wobbly, and the walls half finished, they turned on a playlist. Random, shuffled, chaotic. Something soft came on first, then old school R&B, then K-pop. Ifeyinwa danced while rolling more paint onto the wall, her movements slow, playful. Jihoon watched her for a beat, then joined, pulling her close by the waist, smudging paint on her shirt in the process. "This is not OSHA approved," Jihoon said, grinning. Ifeyinwa, smiling and swaying with him, "Neither is your crib," she said. They moved together, laughter tucked into their shoulders, the scent of fresh paint in the air, music playing like the future had already begun. Later still, after everything was quiet again, they sat on the floor. The paint was drying. The crib stood proudly in the corner. Less of a hazard now. Hope had curled herself up beside it, nose tucked under her paw, tail wrapped tight. Ifeyinwa, watching her, asked, "She knows she's not getting replaced, right?" Jihoon smiled. "She'll make sure of it." They leaned into each other, soft with exhaustion, their fingers tangled between them. Outside, the night had folded around the city. Inside, a family was unfolding. The house was hushed. Candlelight flickered on the mantel, casting warm shadows across the walls. Outside, the wind brushed through the cherry trees, petals tapping against the window like memories trying to get in. Inside, everything felt still. Ifeyinwa lay curled on the couch, wrapped in a knitted blanket the color of sunrise. Her braids were down, her skin glowing in the low light. One hand rested over the gentle swell of her belly. Jihoon sat beside her, legs folded, one hand holding hers, thumb tracing slow circles across her palm. He looked at her like she was something he'd never stopped learning to love. Hope was curled at their feet, chin resting on Jihoon's slipper, tail flicking contentedly. Her place, claimed, permanent, proud. Jihoon asked quietly, "You good?" Ifeyinwa smiled softly, eyes half closed. "I'm full. Like joy full. Like soup full. Just full," she replied. He chuckled, reached for something behind the cushion, a small, wrapped object. She blinked at it as he placed it gently in her lap. "Another gift? I just praised you yesterday for not spoiling me." "Consider it a relapse," Jihoon said, smiling. She peeled back the paper slowly, revealing a leather-bound journal, deep mahogany brown, soft and familiar in her hands. She opened it. The first page read, in Jihoon's handwriting, "For all the first we haven't met yet." Her breath caught, tears prickling her eyes. "You really are getting good at the soft stuff," she said softly. Jihoon, smirking, voice low, "Only for you, and her." He nodded toward Hope, who perked her ears at the sound of her name. "And the baby," Ifeyinwa said. Jihoon mock reluctant, then softly, "The baby too." A silence settled then, not empty but whole. Jihoon murmured, his forehead against hers, "Home used to feel like a place. Now it feels like you." Hope gave a sleepy sigh beneath them, paws twitching like she was dreaming of something beautiful. Ifeyinwa looked at them both, her unexpected family, her impossible, soft miracle. "Love didn't save me, but it gave me a place to start over. And this time, I wasn't alone. This time, I had hope." The office light flickered, not in a dramatic, cinematic way, just cheap wiring in a shared workspace that smelled like cold coffee and stale ambition. Toby sat at a desk that wasn't really his, under a company logo that was still in beta. The printer jammed 3 times that morning. The CEO, barely 24, walked past him without a second glance. His laptop pinged. He didn't even blink. He already knew what it was. Another mention, another article, another photo of her. He opened it anyway. And there she was, Ifeyinwa, hair twisted into a crown of braids, wearing a tailored white dress that hugged her growing belly like it was made for miracles. One hand rested over her bump. The other held a champagne flute of ginger ale. She was laughing. The caption read, "From abandoned to empowered, creative visionary Ifeyinwa Kweku hosts intimate baby shower with CEO husband Jihoon Kang." Toby's eyes scanned the photo before they landed on the man beside her. Ji-hoon, in a charcoal suit, holding her close without holding her back. His gaze was soft, focused, worshipful. Toby's throat tightened. "She used to look at me like that," he whispered to himself. He swallowed hard, his fingers tightening around the mouse. "Until Seoul," he murmured. He clicked to the next slide. A video. Hope, that dog, wearing a tiny bow tie, jumping up to kiss Ifeyinwa's face. "World's best big sister," the caption read. The laugh that escaped him was dry and bitter. He scrolled through her feed, through Ji-hoon's corporate campaign, through her TEDx announcement, through the curated glow-up of a woman he thought would fall apart without him. But she didn't fall. She rose, higher than he ever imagined. And the part that haunted him wasn't that she moved on. It was that she had built something better, without him, because of him. His phone buzzed, a calendar reminder, quarterly review, same meeting, same excuses, same coffee-stained spreadsheet no one would read. Toby closed the tab, but the image of Ifeyinwa lingered. Not the photo, the look, the way she looked like freedom now, like she'd never known him. "Maybe it's time she remembered who helped build her," he said bitterly. The screen went black as he shut the laptop, but in his mind, the plan had already started, and this was worse than the last time. The kitchen was too quiet. No music, no sizzling pan, just the low hum of the fridge and the heavy silence of two people staring at a screen. Ji-hoon scrolled slowly, his jaw tightening with every line. The headline was soft-spoken, but the tone was venom. Behind the glow-up, was Ifeyinwa ever really abandoned? Subhead: Sources claim she exaggerated the scandal that launched her name. Below it, screenshots, cropped messages, one-sided conversations from years ago, snippets that, out of context, painted her as clingy, desperate, obsessed. And in the comments, she used him to get a free trip, then flipped it into a sob story. Funny how the narrative changed once the CEO showed up. Check her tone. That's not how victims talk. Ji-hoon's hands curled into fists. "Where did they get these?" Ji-hoon asked furiously. "My old Gmail. I used it for job apps. For Toby. I forgot to delete it." Ifeyinwa replied quietly. She didn't sound shaken, but Ji-hoon could see the crack in her armor, the way her eyes lingered on one particular photo, a blurry screenshot of a message she'd once sent begging Toby to talk to her after he vanished, a memory she'd buried, now weaponized. Ji-hoon's phone rang, his assistant, PR. He let it go to voicemail. "They're telling me to stay quiet, like the last time. Damage control. Let the story die," he said angrily. He stood, pushing away from the counter so hard the stool clattered behind him. "I've let this man insult you twice. He won't get a third." He paced, like he was in one of his old boardrooms, ready to crush someone with a single glance. He's trying to rewrite history, turn your pain into his PR. I could bury him, legally, financially, publicly. "And then what?" Ifeyinwa asked calmly and steadily. Ji-hoon stopped. Ifeyinwa continued, "What do we prove if we scream louder than him?" She reached out, gently placing her hand over his. "We don't need to fight fire with fire, Ji-hoon. We just have to outlast the smoke," she said softly, with steel underneath. Ji-hoon, looking at her, voice breaking slightly, said, "But he's hurting you." "He's hurting himself. We just happen to be in the light while he does it," Ifeyinwa said. Hope barked once from the hallway, like punctuation. Ji-hoon looked down at their entwined hands, then at her. Really looked. Then he asked softly, "You're not afraid?" Ifeyinwa, shaking her head, "Nope. I've already survived him once. Now, I'm just not giving him any more pages in my story. He nodded slowly, then kissed the back of her hand. If I could carry this for you, I would, he said. You are. By not letting it carry us, she said to him. The screen dimmed. The article would still be there tomorrow. So would the whispers. But tonight, she chose peace. And he chose her. Toby's attempts at sabotage fail. Brands side with Ifeyinwa. Public support grows. A journalist exposes the truth. Ifeyinwa was abandoned in Seoul. Financial records, flight confirmations, hotel logs, all revealed. The article went live at 9:17 a.m. By 10:05, Toby's inbox was flooded with "We regret to inform you" messages. By noon, his boss asked him to step out for a quick word. And by 3 p.m., he no longer worked there. The headline was brutal, clean, impossible to twist, fact-checked. Former partner of creative director Ifeyinwa caught in public lie. It laid everything bare. Hotel logs showed one guest, one night. Her name only. The shared flight reservation was confirmed, then canceled by his account. Bank statements. Her savings gone in a single wire transfer. Emails unanswered. Calls blocked. Even the voicemail transcript. This number is no longer in service. He couldn't breathe, not because he was blindsided, but because deep down, he always knew this would happen. He hadn't underestimated her. He'd overestimated himself. Then Toby saw an old photo, a beautiful moment. Ifeyinwa on stage, speaking at a women's creative summit. Hope sitting near her chair. Jihoon watching from the front row, smiling like there was no one else in the world. Caption: Resilience never looked so radiant. Toby closed the laptop. His reflection stared back at him through the black screen. Drawn, tired, 31, and nowhere near where he swore he'd be. And then he stood, grabbed his coat, and left the office. He tries to confront her one last time. The room was glass and marble. One of Jihoon's meeting lounges, dimly lit, soundproof, private. Not a press room, not a cafe, no witnesses, just truth. Ifeyinwa stepped inside first. Her braids were pulled back, no makeup, no jewelry. Power didn't need decoration tonight. Jihoon followed a beat behind, silent, calm, hands in the pockets of his coat. He didn't need to say a word to command the room. Toby was already there, sitting, fidgeting. The air around him sharp with frustration and something worse. Loss. He looked up when they entered and stilled. Not at Jihoon. At her. She didn't look like someone he left behind anymore. She looked like someone he could never reach again. She sat across from him. Jihoon stayed standing behind her chair. Quiet, unreadable, but there. Toby with his voice shaking. It's all gone. The articles, my job. They pulled everything. No one pulled anything, Toby. You lied. You got caught, Ifeyinwa said evenly. Toby looked at her. I didn't think anyone would care enough to dig. Ifeyinwa, leaning forward, sharp, because you never expected me to matter this much. That one lands. He blinks. Toby with a broken laugh. You matter too much. That's the problem. She tilts her head slightly. Calm, unmoved. I gave you everything, Toby murmured. You gave me debt. You gave me silence. You gave me a hotel room and a lie. That's not love, Toby. That's abandonment wrapped in excuses, she said calmly. You were mine, he said, voice cracking. Jihoon moved then, just one step forward. You never deserved her, he said quietly but final. Toby's jaw flexed. He looked between them. like he was finally seeing what he had truly lost. She rose slowly, with the kind of grace people mistake for fragility. Jihoon didn't move, just brushed his hand along her lower back, not to guide her, just to remind her, I'm here. I didn't walk away, Toby. You left me, in Seoul, in that hotel room, in your silence. She paused, looked him over, tired, unraveling, surrounded by the wreckage of his own bitterness. You didn't break me. You freed me. And I won't be spending any more of my future looking back. She turned, walked to the door. You wouldn't even be where you are without me, Toby said bitterly. That's true, she said calmly. A pause. That admission caught him. Ifeyinwa's voice was soft and cold as glass. You left me in Seoul, and that's where I found everything. My voice, my future, my home. But she didn't stop. She walked to the door, paused, and turned to Toby. You could have healed. You chose revenge. I chose love, and I won. She left the door open behind her. But it wasn't for him. It was for Jihoon, who followed without needing to ask if she was ready, because she already was. The sun was setting by the time they stepped outside. Warm gold stretched across the sidewalk, the last light brushing the city like a final exhale. Ifeyinwa let the silence sit. She hadn't realized how heavy the past still was until she left it in that room. Jihoon didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. He held the door open, walked beside her, matched her steps without rushing them. And then, like magic, Hope came bounding around the corner, tail wagging, tongue out. She jumped straight into Ifeyinwa's arms like a tiny, overexcited therapist who knew exactly what kind of emotional day it had been. Ifeyinwa laughed softly. Okay, I'm still yours. Jihoon reached out, brushed a hand over her back, then pulled her gently into him. Hope still squished happily between them. He kissed her temple. We done looking back? She paused, looked up at him, eyes clearer, shoulders lighter. Completely, she said, smiling. They stood like that for a while. No drama, no cameras, no enemies left to fight. Just her, him, and a small, fluffy dog who'd witnessed the whole journey. Closure doesn't always come with an apology. Sometimes it's just the moment you stop needing one. She was once abandoned in a city that didn't know her name. Now, she's holding everything she thought she lost.